Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and Coffee and Cartridge Podcast. And today we're going to talk about, can you improve rifle cartridges? Stay tuned. I know. The answer is it depends, right? It depends on what you consider to be improved. You might like the original design and you might not want something to be improved. It could, if you have a specific goal in mind, like let's take an existing cartridge and add velocity, feet per second. Can you improve the cartridge to get more velocity out of it? Then the answer is yes. So it depends on the goal in mind. It depends on how you look at the cartridge and your subjective opinion. But all that's boring. We just want to have an interesting conversation. So I'm going to give you my opinion on, can you improve a cartridge? All right, so cartridges have been trying to be improved upon from people for many, many years. All right, so in the mid to late 19th century, we started to get cartridges. Instead of having a muzzle loader where you loaded the components separately, we had a combined cartridge. And then toward the very end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, we started to get things like smokeless powder and Spitzer bullets and rimless cases. And we started to become a little bit more modern in our case design. We started to move away from straight wall cartridges and have cartridges that had a shoulder necking down to the caliber of the rifle. So, going back to the 1890s with the original 8 and 7 millimeters in Germany, the Mausers and the original government cartridge, and then the 1892 6.5 by 55 Swede, and some cartridges like that, we started to kind of usher in a more modern case design. You could say that was an improvement upon the old straight wall rimmed black powder cartridges. I'm sure people of the day would argue about it. Some people had used those old cartridges for a long time and loved them, but I think objectively today we can say that was an improvement. In Britain, they began to develop cartridges like the 404 Jeffries and the 416 Rigby and the 375 Holland & Holland, which replaced a lot of these straight-walled nitro cartridges, the Nitro Express cartridges that used black powder. That was a progression. That was a update and improvement. Here in America, we started to develop cartridges like the 30-06 and the 250 Savage. And then in 1920, we came out with the 300 Savage. And the 300 Savage had a design goal in mind, and that was to be an improved 30-06 in a shorter action to fit into their rifles at the time. Now, as subjective as I can be, it did not succeed at that. We know that 30-06 has a lot more case capacity, is a lot more powerful than a 300 Savage. However, I've called the 300 Savage the first modern case design. Whether you're talking about just the overall dimensions of the case, the shoulder angle, whatever. It had a goal in mind. It failed at that, in my opinion, but is a very cool modern case design all the way back in 1920. It was trying to be an improved 30-06. Fast forward to the 50s, the 308 was trying also to improve upon the 30-06. Did it improve? That's debatable. To some degree, I would say it did exactly what it was meant and set out to do. Get 80 to 90% of the performance of a 30-06 in a short action. Lighter ammunition overall, shorter gun, potentially shorter barrel, more efficient case. I think it did its job perfectly. Did it improve upon the 30-06? That's debatable. 30-06 still has more potential when it comes to velocity and energy, especially with the heavier bullets. When you think of the word improve, you probably think of the gunsmith P.O. Ackley and his Ackley Improved cartridges or cases. Basically what P.O. Ackley would do is he would take an existing cartridge and he would take the body taper out of the cartridge almost all the way, not completely, make it much more of a straight wall cartridge up into the point where the shoulder begins. And then he would make that shoulder angle a very steep 40-degree shoulder angle. What did this do? It added volume, room of capacity in that case, so you could add more powder. And so you could take a 30-30 and Ackley improve it and get a lot more velocity out of it. You could take a 257 Roberts, you could take a 250 Savage. There was a lot of early cartridges that he did improve upon it, which added a lot of velocity. And you look at any of these old cartridges, like the 22 Hornet. Wow. I used to have a 22 Hornet and I loved it. It was a blast to shoot. Has a 5-degree shoulder angle followed by a very long, kind of weird neck. You could Ackley improve that. And kind of, if you look at the 17 Hornet, that's kind of what they did. They modernized it. But there's a lot of old cartridges that P.O. Ackley improved it and got a lot more performance out of it. Also, with that sharper shoulder angle, there's going to be less case stretch. And so if you reload over time, your brass should last longer because it's stretching less. And one cool thing about P.O. Ackley's cartridge designs is, say you have a 280 Ackley Improved, you could get standard 280 Remington ammunition and put it in there and it fires just fine. There's no issue. So you could use both. Because, in fact, that's really how you create the cartridge, is by fire forming it. Putting, say, a 280 in a 280 Ackley Improved, shooting it, and then the case, of course, expands and forms to that chamber. And once you pull it out, it's no longer a 280 Remington case, it's a 280 Ackley Improved case because it's been fire formed. Pretty cool design overall. The question is, did he improve those cartridges? Well, of course, it's up for debate. I would say that he did, because his goal was to get more velocity out of them to be better for hunting purposes. And since checkmark, goal achieved, I would say that he did improve them. But if you're a huge fan of the original design of any of those old cartridges, in your mind they didn't need improved. So of course it's subjective. What about Weatherby? Weatherby, starting in the 40s, in his mind, was improving cartridges. He took the 375 H&H, and then later on he took the 416 Rigby. And there was a couple other exceptions in there, but for the most part it was the 375 H&H or 300 and the 416 Rigby that he used mainly for his parent case. And he did a lot of improvements. He also blew out the shoulders like P.O. Ackley did. He came out with his own proprietary shoulder angle, a Venturi double radius shoulder, which he felt like would be much better. Whether it is or not, hard to tell, but it's definitely, in his mind, was an improvement. His goal overall was speed, just like Ackley, but not to just get more velocity. His goal was to have the most velocity in that particular caliber of any commercial caliber on the market. He also left a lot of free bore in there, and also had a lot of room there for your bullet to be seated out pretty far. As long as it fit in the magazine, you were good. Part of that reason is he knew his factory ammunition would be loaded so hot. He didn't want it to become overpressured by jamming that bullet right up against the lands. So he left some free bore in there and left plenty of room for that bullet to be seated out so it would not become overpressured, because he knew it's going to be screaming out of that case. Now, like I said, there's a few exceptions on Weatherby's cartridges and how he started out, a few differences that he did here and there. And then of course today we have, Roy Weatherby's long gone, but we have some new cartridges, the RPMs, coming out that are different. But for the most part, Weatherby had a design philosophy, and in his mind he was improving these cartridges to be ultra flat and ultra fast. What about the short magnums? Now, I don't think anyone ever claimed that these were improved cartridges, but you can go back to the 300 Dakota and some of the Lazzaroni cartridges, leading into the Winchester Short Magnum and the Remington Short Action Ultra Magnum cases and cartridges that kind of movement that was happening at the end of the 20th and beginning of the 21st century for short magnums was in a way an improvement. And this one would definitely be a controversial statement. Was that an improvement? So for instance, is a 300 Winchester short magnum an improvement on a 300 Winchester magnum? Is a 270 short magnum an improvement on a 270 Winchester? Is a 7 SAUM or 7 WSM an improvement on a 7 Rem Mag? The answer really is, it's up to you. Personally, and I know this will be controversial, I do feel like the 300 WSM in a way is an improvement on the 300 Winchester Magnum, simply because it's more efficient and you're getting more with less powder. And I know loaded to absolute capacities with the heaviest bullets, you're still going to get more out of the Win Mag. But I do consider that a success. So it's very up for debate on whether those short magnum cases are an improvement. Some would say absolutely not. I hate short mag cases, prefer the original. I don't want anything to do with that. Others would say, oh, absolutely. It's a more efficient way of burning the powder in that column. Look at the competitive shooting world. There was a time where the 30-06 was one of the most, accurate and widely used cartridges in long-range shooting. 308 was that same thing at one time. Fast forward to today, it's more 6mm cartridges, especially ones with short, fat cases. Are those new cases an improvement upon the older cases when it comes to long-range accuracy? I would kind of think so, because we're getting much better groups today and much better records. But that also could be with better components, with better rifles, etc. So, hard to really tell. And if I haven't got controversial enough, let me throw this in there. What about Hornady's Creedmoor improvements? So, Hornady's come out with a lot of cartridges in the last 15 years. And they've all been, well, not all, but most of them have been successes, especially the Creedmoor and the PRC cases. And they all have a similar design, and some would say they're an improvement. So I remember years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, probably around the time that the Creedmoor was coming out, but I didn't care about the Creedmoor at the time, I was having a gunsmith build me a 6.5 284. And I was doing a lot of research on really what I wanted in a custom rifle and in a custom cartridge. And I decided way back then I wanted a 1-in-8 twist because I wanted to shoot those heavier high BC bullets. This is a long time ago. And I also decided that I was hoping, in fact I specifically asked the gunsmith to leave a lot of room in that chamber so that I could seat that bullet out pretty far, so that the 140 grain bullet is what I was planning, what I was building it around would not take up too much case capacity. Well then, as time goes on, the 6.5 Creedmoor did basically that. The case is just smaller and doesn't have as much powder, and therefore doesn't have as much velocity potential as the 6.5 284. But it basically did what I, before the Creedmoor came out, was wanting a gunsmith to do for me, because I had decided that those were good attributes. And you look at all the 6.5 PRC, the 7 PRC, the 300 PRC, the 6 ARC, and all these cartridges, they all kind of have that similar design, a match grade, tight tolerance chamber, and heavy high BC bullets. You don't have to shoot those in it, but it's the option is there. The twist rate is there for those, and the room in that chamber is there for those. If you want to shoot a lighter bullet, you can, but it's there. So you have options. And so some would say these new Hornady cartridges are an improvement upon older cartridges. What do you think? So this topic could stir up a hornet's nest, but it really shouldn't. It's very subjective. I love the 30-06. I also like the 308 a lot. I don't think the 308 is an improvement on the 30-06. I just think it's its own cool thing. Okay? I love the 300 Winchester Short Magnum. I don't really think it's an improvement upon the 30-06. I just think it's its own thing. When I think of the 30-06 compared to the 308, I think of the potential there for the most velocity possible out of the 30-06. I also think of the potential to shoot the heavier bullets. And the same with the 300 Win Mag versus the 300 Short Mag. I kind of like the design of the Short Mag better. But if I want to shoot the heaviest bullets, I'm probably going to lean toward, of those two, the 300 Win Mag. So in all honesty, a lot of these things I've mentioned are improvements, but that doesn't mean they're replacements. I'm on a roll here. I'll make another controversial statement. I think the 270 Short Mag is an improvement upon the 270 Winchester. Does that mean the 270 Winchester has been replaced? No. Because the 270 Winchester has some things going for it. It's much more common, much more available, has less recoil, and it's pretty darn close to this 270 Short Mag. So it hasn't been replaced. So I guess to answer the question, can cartridges be improved? Yes. It's everyone's opinion, and it's debatable, and it depends on a lot of things, but yes, they can be, and have been many times. That doesn't mean they're replacing the old cartridge. So I have a 22-250 and a 204 Ruger, which I think are pretty cool, pretty modern cartridges, especially for varminting. And I used to have a 22 Hornet, and I'd like to get one again, and it in no way, shape, or form is modern. And it has been improved upon, I would say, by pretty much every 22 caliber cartridge that's came after it. But none of those replace the 22 Hornet, because the 22 Hornet is fun to shoot. It's very low on report and recoil. It's not too loud, it has no kick. It's a blast to shoot. So, has it been improved upon? Yes. Is it obsolete, or has it been replaced? No. I've been thinking a lot about the 6.8 Western lately. I'm becoming like infatuated with the 270 Winchester Short Magnum. I like it more and more. But I keep telling myself, which is better, the 6.8 Western or the 270 Short Mag? And currently Winchester's offering both of them. In my opinion, Winchester and Browning has kind of just forgot about the 6.8 Western. And they're not marketing it, and it don't seem like there's any new ammo coming out for it. I don't know what that means for the future. I guess we will see. But I would say the 6.8 Western has not replaced the 270 Short Mag. But has it improved some things? Yeah, it has. But if I don't have any plans on shooting a bullet over 150 feet per second, in all honesty, I don't need the improvements that the 6.8 Western offers, because I have everything I want and need in a 270 Short Mag. So there's a give and take there. It's like, what are you looking to get? Are you looking to shoot 165, 175 grain bullets out of a 270 caliber? Then yeah, you need to move up to something like a 6.8 Western, or if you're okay with a longer action, 27 Nosler. But if you're happy as could be with a 110 to 150 grain bullet, maybe a little more, then there's no need for that improvement. In fact, the original might be better. Now, if the way you look at this is a new cartridge comes out and is extremely popular, and is so popular that it makes older cartridges kind of fade away and die out, if that's your way of looking at it, and you say that is because it's an improved version, that's one way of looking at it. But there's a lot of cool cartridges out there that were not really commercially successful and stopped being produced, like the 284 Winchester, for instance, that were cutting edge at the time, modern, just not marketed properly, not utilized properly. Does that mean that a lot of these new cartridges are improved versions of the 284 Winchester? Really, no. They've just been more successful. So a cartridge could come out that is an improvement on an old cartridge, and then that cartridge could not be successful and fall by the wayside and vanish away and never be heard of again. So it doesn't really mean anything. It really just means, how well is it marketed? Do people like it? Do people have success with it? Is it available to get? Because you can have the most cutting edge, modern, efficient, improved case or cartridge of all time, but if you don't produce it, you don't market it, people don't buy it, and nobody can find it, it's not going to work. It's gonna fade away. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think a cartridge can be improved? So what do you think about the Ackley Improved cartridges? What do you think about Weatherby's cartridge improvements? What do you think about the short mags or the competition type, shorter, fatter cases? Was those improvements? What do you think about Hornady's new cartridges that they're coming out with, or Browning and Winchester's 6.8 Western, or the Nosler cartridges that have came out? Are those improvements? Many will say yes, many will say no. I'd love to hear what you think about it and how you look at it. What's your opinion, and how are you looking at this? I've explained to you kind of how I'm thinking about it, but what are you thinking about it? So, pretty curious to find out. If you liked this video, please like it. Please comment, and please subscribe to my channel. I have 2 other channels I'll link in the description below, just starting out. One about pop culture items, one about politics and religion, things like that. If you're only interested in the gun content, then you've found the right place. It's called Hopeful Ballistics, and it's the channel you're watching. Check the description below, though. I have links to Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, my website, and my email. And hope you have a great day. Hopefully this has at least been entertaining or interesting to you. Have a great day, and until next time, take care.